At 41, Prince Harry is finally speaking. The truth he's kept locked away for years is now coming out, and what he's revealing could shake the royal family to its core. You've heard the rumors. You've seen the headlines. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepares you for what Harry claims happened behind the palace walls, in the quiet moments away from cameras, where words cut deeper than any scandal ever could. According to him, Meghan Markle didn't just change his life. She changed the very foundation of the family he once thought unbreakable. She drove a wedge between two brothers, and did so with precision, intent, and a strategy that, according to Harry, no one could have anticipated. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Think about that for a moment. Two brothers, raised together, bonded by tragedy and privilege, suddenly torn apart by someone from outside the family. Is it even possible for one person to hold that much influence? Can love, or something masquerading as love, be so destructive? That's the question millions of royal watchers are asking right now. And Harry, for the first time, is offering an answer. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. To truly understand the gravity of Harry's revelations, we need to step back. We need to revisit a time before Meghan Markle entered the picture. A time when Harry and William were not only brothers but allies, confidants, partners in mischief, and, occasionally, co-conspirators in navigating the unrelenting glare of the public eye. Their bond was forged under immense pressure, shaped by loss, and cemented by shared experiences that most siblings would never have to endure. The death of Princess Diana, for example, was a defining moment for both of them. Harry was just 12, William 15. They were thrust into a global spotlight they neither wanted nor fully understood. Suddenly, the world watched their grief, analyzed their every move, and measured their responses. In private, they leaned on each other. They shared the silent language of sorrow. They joked when they shouldn't. They protected each other when cameras weren't watching. Theirs was a brotherhood shaped by trauma and survival, an intimate alliance that, for many observers, seemed unbreakable. Fast forward a few years. Prince Harry met Meghan Markle. Their story began like a fairy tale, a modern royal romance that captivated headlines worldwide. He was smitten. She was dazzling. Publicly, everything seemed perfect. But behind the smiles and public appearances, cracks began to form, subtle at first, almost imperceptible. Harry started making choices that puzzled his friends, baffled palace aides, and, eventually, strained his relationship with William. According to him, Meghan played a role in those decisions. Not accidentally, not passively, but actively. She allegedly discouraged reconciliation with William, manipulated conversations, and fostered a narrative that deepened the rift between the brothers. She said to me, "You don't need your brother. You only need me," Harry reportedly revealed. Imagine that for a second. A statement like that doesn't just create tension, it creates isolation. It plants a seed of doubt, subtly rewires loyalty, and makes one question relationships they had once considered unshakable. For Harry, who had always been protective of William and deeply committed to family unity, hearing, or even believing, those words would have been devastating. And according to him, the effects weren't immediate. They unfolded slowly, like cracks in a dam, until finally, the family bond that had seemed ironclad was in jeopardy. Now, some might argue that every family experiences conflict, and royal families are no exception. But this was different. This wasn't a spat over a birthday party or a disagreement about holiday plans. This was a deliberate wedge, inserted with precision, in a family already under immense scrutiny. And the consequences were monumental. The world watched, media outlets speculated endlessly, and the brothers, once inseparable, found themselves on opposite sides of a divide that seemed, at times, insurmountable. What makes this story even more compelling is timing. Harry chose now, at 41, to speak. Why now? Why after years of silence, after memoirs, documentaries, and countless interviews? There's speculation. Some suggest it's about reclaiming his narrative before others distort it further. Others believe it's about providing context to recent events that the public has only glimpsed through headlines and social media. Whatever the reason, the timing is explosive. It guarantees attention, it fuels curiosity, and it sets the stage for revelations that many insiders say have never been publicly shared before. But let's pause for a moment, because if we rush too quickly into scandal, we lose the context that makes this story matter. What Harry reveals isn't just about Meghan or about a rift between brothers. It's about family, loyalty, trust, and how quickly those foundations can be shaken by outside influence. It's about the human consequences of decisions made in private, decisions that suddenly play out on a global stage where every action is scrutinized, every word is dissected, and every misstep is amplified. And that brings us to a question every viewer should ask themselves. How far would you go to protect someone you love, even if it meant sacrificing other relationships you hold dear? Could you be persuaded, manipulated, or influenced to the point where your perception of right and wrong is altered? This is what Harry claims happened, and what makes this story so unnervingly relatable, even beyond the gilded walls of the palace. Now, let's talk about the tension itself. According to Harry, the wedge Meghan drove wasn't about petty disagreements or minor misunderstandings. It was strategic. It was consistent. It involved careful conversations, deliberate actions, and subtle pressure. For example, Harry describes situations where attempts at reconciliation with William were intercepted or discouraged. Conversations that could have healed wounds were deflected or reframed. Advice from neutral parties was often overridden or ignored. Each interaction, according to Harry, reinforced isolation rather than understanding, creating a cycle that gradually eroded his relationship with his brother. Think about the psychology behind that for a second. Human relationships are delicate. Trust is built slowly, and when it's undermined, even subtly, it can create lasting damage. Harry, like anyone else, wasn't immune. He describes moments of doubt, guilt, and confusion. Moments where he questioned his loyalty to William, to the family, and even to himself. This internal struggle, he claims, was exacerbated by external pressures, media scrutiny, public opinion, and the constant glare of the royal spotlight. In such an environment, even small manipulations can feel monumental. But here's where the story gets even more shocking. Harry isn't just reflecting on emotional manipulation or private disagreements. He claims that Meghan's influence reached a point where it impacted his major life decisions, his public appearances, and his very identity within the royal family. Choices that once would have been collaborative or guided by familial advice were now filtered through her perspective. And in his view, that filtering wasn't benign. It created a pattern of estrangement, isolation, and public conflict that neither he nor William could have anticipated. Now, this is where viewers might feel conflicted. On one hand, Meghan's defenders argue that any couple inevitably reshapes their priorities and decisions. But Harry's account suggests that this wasn't simply about shifting priorities. It was about deliberate interference in family dynamics. It's a claim that, if true, redefines our understanding of one of the most high-profile royal relationships in recent history. And it raises another question. Why would someone do this? Was it jealousy? Fear of losing influence? A desire for control? Harry doesn't provide all the answers, but he does suggest intention, and that distinction matters. And as we stand here, on the cusp of diving deeper into Harry's revelations, there's one last thing to consider. Every family has secrets. Every public figure has stories untold. But the combination of personal betrayal, media scrutiny, and royal expectation creates a pressure cooker where small incidents become monumental and private words echo across the globe. Harry's story is compelling not just because it's about Meghan or William, but because it's a human story, one of loyalty, love, influence, and the sometimes devastating consequences when trust is broken. So, as we move forward, ask yourself, what really happened behind the palace walls? Which words were spoken, which actions were deliberate, and which were misinterpreted? And more importantly, how did one relationship manage to redefine a family's destiny? The answers are coming. And according to Harry, they're far more shocking than anything the public has ever seen. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Could a bond really be unbreakable? Could two brothers, who survived the public death of their mother together, really be torn apart by a single outside influence? Before we answer that, we have to understand where it all started, before Meghan Markle ever stepped into Harry's life, before cameras watched their every move, and before whispers of betrayal began circulating in the palace corridors. Because the story of Harry and William isn't just a story of royal scandal. It's a story of brotherhood forged under unimaginable pressure. Harry and William were more than siblings. They were allies from the moment they were born into a world that demanded perfection. They had shared secrets, secret hideaways in the sprawling estates, and even secret ways of rebelling against the rigid expectations placed upon them. From childhood pranks to daring escapades in the grounds of Kensington Palace, they were partners in mischief and in survival. But survival wasn't just about dodging royal etiquette. It was about navigating grief, loss, and the unrelenting scrutiny of the public eye. Take, for instance, the death of Princess Diana in 1997. Harry was 12. William was 15. For most teenagers, the loss of a parent is devastating enough. For these two, it was a global tragedy, a spectacle dissected in newspapers, television broadcasts, and tabloids. Millions of people mourned with them, or at least, they claimed to. And in that moment, their relationship became a lifeline. They had no choice but to rely on each other. They had to be each other's anchor, shielding one another from the media circus that seemed to hover like a storm cloud above them. In private, their bond was palpable. Harry once described it as an unspoken language, a way of communicating without words, where a glance or a gesture could mean comfort, warning, or solidarity. And yet, even in those early days, the seeds of independence were there. William, older and more attuned to the pressures of royal life, often felt the weight of expectation in a way Harry did not. Harry, by contrast, had a restless energy, a mischievous streak that both frustrated and endeared him to his older brother. Together, they were a balance. William the anchor, Harry the spark. But what happens when balance is disrupted? When one spark catches fire in ways the other doesn't anticipate? At this stage in their lives, the idea that a future spouse could alter that dynamic would have seemed almost impossible. And yet, as we know now, impossibility is often just the first step toward inevitability. Before Meghan, Harry's choices were deeply intertwined with William's guidance. Major decisions, whether personal, professional, or public, were often discussed between them, debated late into the night, weighed carefully against shared experience. William, being the heir to the throne, bore the brunt of public expectation, but he also carried a sense of responsibility for Harry. There were unspoken rules about protecting one another, shielding each other from unnecessary exposure, and ensuring that the family image remained intact even in private turbulence. And yet, even in that closeness, cracks existed. Sibling rivalries are natural, even under royal circumstances. William sometimes viewed Harry's impulsiveness as reckless, while Harry occasionally felt constrained by William's careful, measured approach. These differences were minor, manageable, and ultimately contained within the private sphere of brotherhood. They joked, argued, and reconciled quickly. Their love for each other was resilient, tested by circumstance, not easily broken. Imagine, then, the scale of the disruption that would come later. Imagine a bond so deeply rooted being slowly, almost imperceptibly challenged. That's what makes Harry's claims about Meghan so powerful. Because when he says that she drove a wedge between him and William, we have to understand the enormity of that claim. This wasn't a casual disagreement. It wasn't a fleeting misunderstanding. It was an interference in a relationship that had survived grief, scandal, and relentless public attention. And it succeeded in ways that even the brothers themselves might not have fully realized at the time. To put it in perspective, think about the small, everyday moments that define brotherhood. A shared joke during a family dinner, a private conversation about fears or frustrations, a glance across a room that says, "I've got your back." According to Harry, these moments began to change subtly after Meghan entered his life. Not immediately, not drastically, but in ways that compounded over months and years. Decisions that would once have been mutual were now influenced, reframed, or deferred. Guidance from William was questioned, advice from family members was sometimes ignored, and the natural rhythm of their brotherhood was disrupted. Even outside observers noticed the shift, though few understood the reasons. To the public, the relationship between Harry and William seemed to be strained, but how strained? Tabloid speculation painted a picture of mild disagreement, temporary friction, a phase that would pass. But insiders say otherwise. Those closest to the brothers describe a growing distance, one that was emotional as well as physical. Shared confidences dwindled. Meetings that once included candid conversation became formal, measured, and sometimes tense. The laughter that had defined their interactions was replaced by guarded exchanges, careful wording, and subtle avoidance. But what happened next would change everything, and no one saw it coming.